The truth is harsh but freeing. You weren't unworthy. They were unprepared. Most people want the idea of love, not the responsibility that comes with receiving something real. They crave attention, comfort, validation, but they don't know how to hold loyalty, depth, or devotion. And when someone like you shows up, someone who loves with intensity, who gives without calculating, who commits without hesitation, it overwhelms them. They romanticize the concept of being loved deeply until they actually experience it. Then they run, freeze, or sabotage, not because you are too much, but because they are too little for the kind of love you bring. Your presence exposes the emotional gaps they've been avoiding in themselves. You didn't break them. They were already cracked before you showed up. You simply illuminated it. Think about the way you loved fully, fearlessly, wholeheartedly. You loved in a world where people only half show up. You cared in a time when detachment is a trend. You stayed loyal in a generation that celebrates options. You gave your heart to people who had never done the inner work required to manage a connection that demands sincerity, accountability, and emotional maturity. They wanted your energy, but not your expectations. They loved the benefits of you, but not the responsibility of you. They enjoyed what your presence gave them: comfort, reassurance, sense of importance, but they never considered what they needed to give in return. It wasn't that your love was too heavy, it was that they had weak hands. And when people are unprepared for real love, they start to feel threatened. Your consistency exposes their inconsistency. Your honesty exposes their avoidance. Your loyalty exposes their indecision. Your emotional courage exposes their fear. And instead of rising to your level, they retreat to the comfort of their old patterns. It's easier for them to claim you were too much than to admit they were too little. It's easier to blame your intensity than confront their emotional cowardice. It's easier to leave than grow. But here's the part you need to understand deeply: their inability to love you properly was never proof you were unworthy. It was proof they were unequipped. Or you're not hard to love. You just love people who weren't ready for the kind of connection that requires self-awareness, effort, and vulnerability. You keep replaying moments, thinking you should have loved softer, given less, spoken quieter, demanded nothing. But the truth is, even if you had dimmed your light, even if you had given less of yourself, even if you had lowered your standards, the outcome wouldn't have changed, because the issue was never your depth. It was their lack of it. You gave love from a place of understanding, healing, and growth. They tried to receive it from a place of fear, wounds, and avoidance. That mismatch was not your failure. It was a sign that you outgrew the emotional spaces they were still trapped in. And one day, when you meet someone who recognizes the value of your heart without needing a demonstration, you'll finally see that the love you gave was more than enough. It was a blessing they simply weren't prepared to hold. Loving becomes self-abandonment when you start giving so much of yourself that you slowly disappear in the process. At first, you think you're being supportive, loyal, devoted, doing what love is supposed to do. You think loving harder will compensate for their lack of effort. You think being patient will eventually inspire them to change. You think giving more of your time, your energy, your heart will finally make them treat you the way you hope they will. But before you even realize it, you've crossed a line. Not the line of loving them, but the line of betraying yourself. Because every time you silence your needs to keep someone else comfortable, you erode a piece of your self-worth. Every time you swallow your pain to avoid conflict, you teach yourself that your emotions don't matter. Every time you let them get away with the bare minimum, you convince yourself that you deserve the bare minimum. And it always starts small. You compromise once, then twice, then 100 times. You stop asking for effort because you're afraid they'll leave. You stop expressing your hurt because you're tired of being called dramatic. You stop expecting consistency because inconsistency has become normal. You gradually shift from being a participant in the relationship to being the glue that desperately tries to hold everything together. They don't even have to take you for granted. You do it for them because you're too focused on loving them to notice the way you're draining yourself. And in the process, the relationship becomes a one-sided performance where you're doing all the giving, all the fixing, all the holding on, while they simply show up when it benefits them. The worst part is how easily you start believing that your needs are an inconvenience. You convince yourself that asking for basic emotional respect is asking for too much. You start thinking you're the problem, that if you were less emotional, less demanding, less intense, they would stay. You shrink your personality, mute your feelings, lower your standards, all in the name of love. But that's not love. That's fear disguised as devotion. Love does not require you to suffer silently. Love does not demand you to abandon yourself for the sake of keeping someone else happy. Real love expands you. It doesn't diminish you. The deeper truth is this. When you over-love someone who under-loves you, you end up negotiating the value of your own heart. You lose the ability to distinguish between love and attachment. You mistake emotional labor for affection. You start pouring from an empty cup, hoping they'll notice you're running dry, but they won't, because people who benefit from your self-abandonment rarely stop you. They encourage it intentionally or not. They get comfortable with the version of you that bends, breaks, and sacrifices. And the more you give without receiving, the more invisible you become. Eventually, the exhaustion catches up. Something inside you snaps, not in anger, but in clarity. You realize that you've been loving them so much that you forgot to love yourself. You see that over loving someone who barely shows up for you is not loyalty, it's self-neglect. And the moment you begin to reclaim your worth, your boundaries, your voice, everything changes. You start loving not from desperation, but from dignity. And that's when the right people start appearing, the ones who don't require you to abandon yourself for love, but encourage you to return to yourself fully. Reciprocation is the real proof of love, because words, promises, and intentions mean nothing without aligned action behind them. Anyone can say they care. Anyone can say they'll try. Anyone can say they won't hurt you. But love isn't measured by what people say in moments of convenience. It's measured by what they consistently show through effort, sacrifice, and presence. When someone truly cares, it becomes visible in the smallest ways, the way they are struggling, the way they listen when you speak, the way they make room for your emotions instead of dismissing them. Real love is action, not performance. You've probably been in situations where you gave everything, your time, your energy, your emotional availability, hoping that the other person would eventually meet you halfway. But the painful reality is that you can give everything to someone who gives you just enough to keep you hopeful, but never enough to make you secure. They breadcrumb you with affection, giving you tiny drops of attention so you stay, while never offering the consistency you deserve. That kind of love is not love at all. It's convenience. They love what you offer, not what you are. Reciprocation is not about matching every gesture perfectly. It's about showing genuine willingness, effort, and intentionality. Love shouldn't feel like one person doing all the emotional heavy lifting. It shouldn't feel like you're the one always initiating conversations, resolving conflicts, or maintaining the connection. If you're the one always reaching out first, always apologizing first, always planning everything, always adjusting yourself to fit their comfort, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a cycle of emotional imbalance. And that imbalance slowly destroys your confidence, your peace, and your belief in what healthy love should feel like. But here's what people rarely admit. When someone doesn't reciprocate, it's not because they don't know how. It's because they don't want to, not with you, not in this moment, not at the cost of their comfort. Effort is a choice. Consistency is a choice. Emotional availability is a choice. Even communication is a choice. People will show up for what matters to them, and if they don't show up for you, then you aren't the priority, no matter how much you love them. This truth stings, but it also frees you. When love is real, both people pour into each other. Both people invest. Both people care about the impact of their actions. Both people want the relationship to grow. Reciprocation turns love into a partnership instead of a burden. It creates stability instead of insecurity. It builds trust instead of doubt. Without reciprocation, love becomes a transaction, one where you're the only one paying. You deserve someone who meets you with the same energy you give, someone who doesn't make you question your worth, someone who doesn't make you beg for the basics: effort, respect, time, communication, consistency. Because the person who truly loves you will never allow you to carry the relationship alone. When you finally encounter someone who reciprocates your love effortlessly, you'll realize how draining it was to overextend yourself for people who gave you fragments. You'll understand that love was never supposed to feel like a battlefield you fight alone. And you'll finally accept that reciprocation isn't extra. It's the foundation of everything real, everything lasting, and everything healthy. Pain is not punishment. It's a boundary being born. You don't wake up one morning and magically decide to stop tolerating disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional neglect. It happens slowly through the accumulation of moments where you felt unseen, unheard, or unvalued. Every time someone dismissed your feelings, every time you forgave something that cut you deeply, every time you stayed silent to keep the peace, pain was quietly shaping you. Pain was taking notes when you weren't. Pain was studying every situation where you abandoned yourself to keep someone else comfortable. And when you finally reach your breaking point, it isn't weakness. It's clarity erupting from all the things you ignored. People often mistake heartbreak for failure, but heartbreak is simply the universe forcing you to confront the truth you've been avoiding, the truth that you deserve more than what you've been settling for, the truth that your loyalty was misplaced, the truth that you've been trying to revive something that was already emotionally dead. Pain isn't there to hurt you. It's there to wake you up. It's life saying, this is not your home. Move. Pain pushes you out of situations you would have stayed in forever if there were no consequences. Without pain, you'd still be trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed, trying to prove yourself to people who don't care to understand you, trying to force connections that have already expired. And the moment the pain becomes too loud to ignore, something shifts inside you. You start seeing patterns instead of excuses. You start recognizing manipulation instead of mistaking it for love. You stop accepting breadcrumbs and start recognizing your appetite for emotional nourishment. Pain teaches you boundaries by making you feel the cost of not having them. Your tears weren't useless, they were data. Your heartbreak wasn't pointless, it was direction. Your disappointment was not a setback, it was redirection to something healthier. The truth is, boundaries are difficult to create when you're in love. You want to believe the best in people. You want to give second chances, sometimes 10th chances. You want to hold on to hope because letting go feels like failure. But pain changes that. Pain makes you choose yourself. Pain makes you recognize that love should not destroy you. Pain makes you realize that the people you bend over backwards for often won't even lean forward for you. Pain forces a new version of you to rise, the version you should have been before you allowed others to chip away at your worth. And with each boundary born out of pain, you elevate, you begin to move differently. You start saying no more often. You stop tolerating mixed signals and inconsistent behavior. You refuse to negotiate your self-respect. You stop giving access to people who earned their distance. You realize you don't need closure from someone who wasn't open with you in the first place. The same pain that once broke you becomes the strength that rebuilds you. One day you'll look back and understand that the heartbreak was not an ending. It was an awakening. It was the moment your self-worth stopped being negotiable. It was the moment you stopped settling for half love, half effort, half presence. Pain was not a punishment. It was the lesson that made you choose yourself. And choosing yourself will always be the beginning of every good thing that follows. Loving the wrong people drains your power because it slowly pulls you away from the person you're supposed to become. Not all love nourishes. Some love weakens you without you realizing it. Some relationships don't break you suddenly. They drain you quietly. They take pieces of your confidence, your joy, your energy, your purpose, until you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. You think you're tired from life, but you're tired from carrying someone who never learned how to stand on their own. You think you're losing motivation, but you're losing yourself in the process of trying to save someone who's not even trying to save themselves. The wrong person doesn't have to destroy you loudly. They do it softly through neglect, inconsistency, and emotional laziness. When you love someone who doesn't know how to love you back, you start adjusting your entire life around their shortcomings. You start shrinking your dreams to make room for their excuses. You tone down your ambition so they don't feel insecure. You silence your needs so they don't feel overwhelmed. You lower your standards so they don't feel pressured. All of this feels like compromise at first, but soon you realize it's not compromise, it's a sacrifice, and you're the only one making it. The relationship becomes a place where you pour and pour and pour, and they simply take. And the more you give, the more they expect, and the less they appreciate. Your generosity becomes routine, your effort becomes invisible, your heart becomes something they assume will always be there. Loving the wrong people distorts your sense of what love is supposed to feel like. You start believing that love is supposed to hurt, that it's supposed to drain you, that it's supposed to demand self-sacrifice. You start confusing chaos with passion, inconsistency with mystery, emotional instability with depth. The wrong person makes you normalize dysfunction, and once dysfunction becomes familiar, you start mistaking it for home. But love is not supposed to exhaust you. It's not supposed to make you feel small. It's not supposed to dim your spirit or leave you questioning your worth. Real love should elevate you, not empty you. When you surround yourself with the wrong people, your life slows down, your growth stops, your dreams stall. You lose clarity about your purpose because you're too busy surviving the emotional storm someone else creates. The wrong person becomes a distraction, one that keeps you stuck in cycles instead of pushing you forward. You lose years trying to make someone see your value when the right person would have recognized it instantly. You waste time begging for loyalty when someone else would have offered it freely. You spend nights overthinking things that shouldn't even be problems. The hardest part is accepting that not everyone you love is meant to go with you into the next chapter of your life. Some people are meant to teach you, not join you. Some are meant to show you your strength by draining it first. Some are meant to break your heart so you can rebuild it stronger. And once you detach from the wrong person, something incredible happens. You regain your power. Your energy returns. Your focus sharpens. Your peace comes back. You begin to rise again higher than before because you're no longer carrying emotional dead weight. You eventually discover that the wrong person was never a loss. They were the lesson that prepared you for the right one. They pushed you back toward yourself. They taught you your own value by failing to honor it. And when you finally reclaim your power, you realize that loving the wrong people wasn't your mistake. It was your transformation. When your standards are low, you invite everyone in. When your standards are unclear, you allow people to treat you however they want. And when your standards are built on fear of being alone, fear of not being chosen, fear of not being enough. You tolerate what your soul was never meant to accept. The truth is simple but life-changing. Your love was never the problem. Your standards were. You kept giving chances to people who didn't deserve access. You kept forgiving behavior that should have been a deal breaker. You kept accepting excuses instead of demanding accountability. Not because you were weak, but because you believed that loving someone meant enduring everything they brought into your life. But real love doesn't require you to abandon your self-respect. Real love doesn't demand you to make yourself small so someone else can feel big. Real love strengthens your standards instead of breaking them. When you raise your standards, you're not becoming difficult, you're becoming clear. And clarity scares the wrong people because they thrive in the blurred lines where they can give you almost enough kind of effort and partial commitment without ever stepping fully into the relationship. But the moment you demand consistency, honesty, effort, and reciprocity, they disappear, not because you asked for too much, but because they were offering too little. Your standards don't push away the right people. They push away the ones who never planned to give you real love in the first place. For so long, you believed that lowering your standards was the key to keeping someone. You thought being more flexible, more understanding, more forgiving would somehow convince them to treat you better. You gave discounts on your heart and then wondered why people treated you like you were cheap. You taught people how to love you by what you tolerated, and as long as you kept accepting the bare minimum, that's all you ever received. But the moment you start honoring your worth, everything changes. You stop entertaining people who only come when they need something. You stop replying to inconsistent messages. You stop explaining your value to anyone who refuses to see it. You stop allowing people to drain your energy or play with your emotions. Your standards become a filter, and that filter protects your peace. When someone truly wants you, your standards don't intimidate them, they inspire them. They rise to meet you because they see the value in your heart. They put an effort not because you demand it, but because they want to. They communicate, show up, apologize, and grow because they understand your worth and want to be worthy of you too. Raising your standards doesn't make you unlovable. It makes you unforgettable. It weeds out the emotionally lazy, the inconsistent, the half-present, the half-hearted. It attracts people who bring clarity, not confusion, intention, not excuses, loyalty, not convenience. And the most powerful shift happens inside you. You stop trying to prove you're enough and start choosing people who already see that you are. In the end, your standards shape the love you receive. Weak standards lead to weak connections. Strong standards create strong relationships. When you finally decide that your heart is too precious for inconsistency, too rare for disrespect, too powerful for half, life starts sending you people who match your level. And when the right person arrives, you'll see that your love was always more than enough. It simply needed to be protected by standards worthy of it.